Fine.
All right. Can I get started now? Sorry about
Yeah,
this.
yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so I think the topic today is ICANN, its mission and activities. And, uh, as I go into that segment, as a preamble, I just wanted to share a couple of slides just to set the table, as it were. So what I'm going to cover today is very briefly the global internet, and I'm sure uh, all of you in the room are already following some of these issues. Again, how the DNS works. Again, I'm very sure that many of you or all of you will probably be aware, but I just wanted to go over it so that it re-emphasizes some of the slides that come later. And then, of course, there are these slides on what ICANN does and what our mission is. So, the unique thing about the internet is how many people it has connected over the last 20-25 years. And as of January this year, 4.54 billion people have been online, and particularly, over the last 6 to 8 months during the COVID times, the internet has sort of been, in a sense, the lifeline for all of us to be able to remain productive. The 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 real issue over here is the fact that the internet is a very decentralized system, and there are different entities, including ICANN, which plays a role. And today I'm going to be talking particularly about what ICANN does. Uh, so, okay, so to get a feel for what ICANN does, I have this very simple slide which shows how the internet works. And uh, as the end user requests let's say, wants to go to a website called example.com, it goes to the recursive server, which is your ISP in this case, and typically it should go to one of the 13 root servers, ask the question, and eventually get connected to one of the .com name servers, and again ask the question for example.com, and then be directed to the exact IP address for example.com. Now, all of this is happening very seamlessly at a very high speed. And the reason it happens, it is able to take place at such a high speed, is because it's a decentralized system. For example, of the 13 root servers that I've mentioned over here, uh, there are 22 instances in India itself of some of the root servers, including two of the ones that ICANN runs. So the more resiliency you build into the system, the faster and better performance you get from, at least from the pure connectivity perspective. So moving on, I'm now going to talk about specifically about ICANN. So what is ICANN's mission? Our mission is to ensure the stable and secure operation of the internet's unique identifier system. So the unique identifier system is the combination of names, numbers, and protocol parameters which go with the names and numbers. And our focus is only to look at the stable and secure operation of this part of the internet. Part of that focus is also to be generating the IP addresses, which then get distributed regionally across the globe. So in specific terms, what ICANN does is to coordinate the allocation and assignment of names, or the top level domain names, in the root zone of the domain name system. We coordinate the development and implementation of policies concerning the registration of second-level domain names in generic top-level domains. So now, I wanted to stop here and just say that when I talk about implementation of development and implementation of policies, uh, these policies are created by uh, not by ICANN organization, but by the community, which is part of the policymaking process. Uh, the ICANN organization acts like a secretariat to the community in that sense. Continuing on with this list, ICANN also facilitates the coordination and the operation and evolution of the DNS root naming server system. We coordinate the allocation and assignment of the topmost level of IP numbers and ASNs. uh, Collaborate with other bodies as appropriate to provide registries needed for the functioning of the internet as specified by IP standards and development organizations. Now, essentially, we are committed to certain core values. First is to preserve the and enhance the stability, security, and
Hey
resilience.
Gandhi, हट मेरा लैपटॉप से उतर नीचे. Stupid. Move.
I think I can continue.
So please continue. We are sorry for that.
So preserving and enhancing the stability, security, and resiliency and openness of the DNS and the internet, employing an open, transparent, bottom-up, multi-stakeholder process for policy development and operating with efficiency and excellence in a fiscally responsible and accountable manner. I'll just stress on these three a little bit. Our core focus is to preserve and enhance the stability, security, and resiliency and openness of DNS. And what this really means is that every now and then, or every so often, there is a new technology that is going to connect or interface with the World Wide Web or the TCP/IP system, whether it is 5G, whether it is Internet of Things, and we have to keep always making sure that this new system integrates and can work with the existing system. Because if it does not, then the challenge which we are faced with is the risk of fragmentation. And I mean, if we get some time later, we can discuss some of these challenges, or at least one challenge that we've identified with 5G technology. And we're working with W3C and various telecom organizations to overcome that challenge. But our focus is to make sure that we are able to maintain the stability, security, and resiliency and openness of the DNS. The second point about employing open, transparent, and bottom-up multi-stakeholder policy development, what this really means is everybody today who is in the room virtually listening to this conversation we are having or participating in this conversation, every single one of you can participate in global policy making at ICANN. There is no barrier to entry, but one will need to find the right forum. There are several concurrent forums which operate and which I will talk about very briefly. And the third point around operating with efficiency and excellence in a fiscally responsible and accountable manner. Of course, all our financial details are published, for the public to scrutinize. But more importantly, we are very conservatively managed because the last thing ICANN needs to get embroiled into is a very expensive lawsuit. Because we are a technical organization, we are a non-profit, we have reserves And the whole idea is to ensure that we continue to be able to follow through on the mission that we have. So we need to be always very careful as to how we sort of spend money and how we perform. So the ICANN ecosystem is made out of three, elements. I am speaking on behalf of the organization that you see in the bottom left-hand side of the screen. And as I said earlier, we act like almost like a secretariat for the community that you see on top of the ecosystem. And the community in turn, elects members to the board of ICANN. Of course, from ICANN organization, our CEO sits on the board as well. But apart from that, all other board members are community elected by the community, and the CEO of ICANN has also been sort of hired by the board. So it is truly community led in these respects. Now, at ICANN, we do not mandate technology. We are not a technology licensor. We are not a technology, standards organization in that sense. But we do work with policies that are related to internet technologies. So how does this policymaking process take place? So the multi-stakeholder model or the multi-stakeholder community at ICANN has two broad divisions. On the one side, you have supporting organization, and on the other side, advisory committees. So the supporting organizations actually create policy, and the advisory committees on the other side provide advice to the supporting organizations on the policy. And essentially, the policy making process are related to those communities which are involved in the addressing system, the addressing also the numbers part, and the names part. Now, in the names part, there are two parts. One is the country code names supporting organization or CCNSO, such as the country code top level domains are like .in or .us or .pk. These are sovereign properties of nations, and they don't hold contracts with ICANN. But because ICANN plays the role of coordinating the DNS, they are very much part of the policymaking process. And then, of course, we have the generic names supporting organization. That is the large, the companies, the registries and registrars who make up the broader, larger ecosystem of the domain name system, and there are registry operators and registrars who actually interface with customers in selling the domain names. In terms of providing advice, there are 4 advisory committees, and the role of these committees are to make recommendations, and the advisory committees are made up of governments and international treaty organizations. So we call it the Governmental Advisory Committee, and there are over 170 odd nations and treaty organizations part of that committee. Then there are root server operators, or we call them the RSSAC or RSAC, the Internet Security Expert or the Security and Stability Advisory Committee, and lastly, but most importantly, Internet users, also known as at-large community. So this policy-making process is an interplay of how the 3 supporting organizations scope out, a policy issue They create a working group, and how they go through the process of interfacing with the community who may not be part of this working group, or definitely not are not part of the working group, and eventually come up with a policy. Then it goes to the board for ratification, and in a lot of instances there's a cross community engagement that takes place. So on this slide, what we are showing is how the three policymaking arms of ICANN actually operate in a very broad sense. Each process is slightly different from the other one, but broadly end up doing the same things. This slide is a little difficult to read, and I will share this deck later. It can be circulated, so you can you can sort of expand it and look at it in more detail. Now, I'm going to share some examples of policymaking over the years, just to give you a flavor of how this all comes together. So for the longest time, when the internet came into existence and became a more public sort of tool for communications, you know, the operative top level domains and second level names were all in Latin script or English language, uh, and we can see right on top of the screen you had top level domains such as .org, .com, .uk. However, as the connectivity of the internet sort of increased over time, the demand for non-ASCII or non-Latin top-level domains started appearing. And from 2009, we started something called the internationalized domain names. And in fact, .bharat was added in 2014. So this process started in 2009. And just with relation to India and the index scripts, 9 of the most prominent index scripts are actually available now in the root zone of the internet. And Nixie has .bharat available in 15 scripts, and all those 15 scripts are by and large covered by the 9 scripts which are available in the second level as well. So a fair amount of work was done by Indian stakeholders over the last 3 to 4 years in developing these competencies. Another example of policy development, so till 2012 or till before 2012, the top level domains, there were only 22 TLDs, but there was a demand from community saying that there is a lot of domain name squatting. And domain names were becoming regarded as brands. So why should there only be 22 TLDs? There should be more. And we started the process called new GTLD, or new generic top level domain process, registration process. And what ended up happening is that when the first round took place, about 1,243 odd TLDs have now come into existence. From India, you have, for example, .geo, although it's not being used, but it is in fact a TLD, as is .sbi. State Bank of India actually uses it. Dabur uses it for their internal mail system, and several others such as HDFC Bank, Tata Motors, and .OOO. So all of this happened, from 2012 onwards. I want to stop here and also share with you when there were 22 top level domains. Uh, you would imagine that managing the root server or system or the root zone files of the internet was that much more easier. So when we had to scope for future expansion, we need to make sure that when you get a dot football, as you see on the screen, or dot Paris, or even the things in Chinese, Japanese, or which any other script or Devanagari script, the system should be able to process it. So, when we talk about processing, there are two aspects to it. One is of course, the security aspect, and the other is actually the connectivity aspect. So that having it is, having a top level domain which has a .bharat address is very nice and can be useful. But the challenge is, does it actually show the way does it render the way it's supposed to render when it goes to somebody else? And out of the previous two policy making process, we realized, or the community also realized, that a challenge was appearing, what we call is a universal acceptance readiness challenge. And this is when you have a non-ASCII script, or even in ASCII, you have a very large address such as .barclays. Barclays Bank has .barclays. And when somebody sent a mail using the .barclays mail address, uh, receiving servers were unable to process it because they had been set to only accept, for example, four characters after the dot, four characters on the right of a dot. So Barclays was longer, and therefore it could not be received. So we ended up discovering that this was a very serious issue, and now the focus has therefore moved to something called universal acceptance. And universal acceptance in itself is a fairly extensive topic, which I'm not covering in detail right now, but I'll be very happy to take questions. But I've put on this slide just the 5 tenets of UA, which is to be able to accept, validate, store, process, and display non-ASCII sort of script when it comes in the top level of the DNS. So this is UA that, and there's a fair bit of work going on in India on this. And again, whether it's for internationalized domain names or email address internationalization or UA, if anyone who's in the room today has more interest, I'll be very happy to take the discussion offline later and share more information. So where, I'm about to conclude my talk. So where is ICANN today, and what are we focused on? So as I said earlier, our focus remains on maintaining the stability and security of the internet in different ways. Now, we continue to engage with policymakers as required. We've made a submission on India's PDP bill. We are engaged in an ongoing basis with the European Union on GDPR, because the WHOIS system has been rendered ineffective since GDPR came into existence. We publish a large number of white papers. And by the way, all these hyperlinks are active. You can, once I share this, you'll be able to click on the hyperlinks and take a look at the white papers which are there. We also have publications related to government engagement, particularly on the internet and intergovernmental organizations such as the United Nations, which plays a very important role in the ICT space in its sort of in its activities. And of course, we get drawn into a lot of law enforcement engagements with governments and agencies globally, particularly related to what we call DNS abuse. As I said earlier, we do not get engaged on the content side. We are purely, on the technology side. But there are different kinds of domain name system abuse that people ingeniously develop. And we work with various organizations globally, including the Interpol and other law enforcement agencies, and also some agencies or some global organizations where you have, uh, systems operators or CISOs participating in the security aspect. So all of those links are active. More information on ICANN is available at these handles that I've shared. And that's the end of my presentation. I'll be very happy to take any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Mr. Samiran, you said ICANN has made some submissions on PDPP.
Right.
On which area of PDPP ICANN made some submissions?
So I can in fact share that with you because it's a public document.
Yeah.
It's really related to the the relationship of a registrant with a registrar. Okay. And you and I have spoken of late with regards to Net for India, for example. And so we pointed out a couple of clauses which just needs to be reworded in a manner so that if there is a challenge with a registrar, a registrant should not be penalized and his or her service should not get disrupted. So we want to ensure that that gets captured. At this point, I cannot confirm one way or the other whether that suggestion has been taken on board. We'll only get to see it if we see the final version of the bill. I see a couple of, there's a question. What ICANN is doing to effectively tackle issues of cyber squatting. So when it comes to cyber squatting, of course, over the years, there have been, fair number of developments where WIPO has adjudicated, and we go by the WIPO sort of system. And if there is in fact cyber squatting, there's a whole mechanism in place where the registrar in particular has to play a role in prevent it. And then if there is a need for any kind of law enforcement intervention, we support that. I see another question. What is there a possibility? Okay, there are a lot of questions coming, so I'll stay with the list. What is an effective way to stop lookalike domains? This is lookalike domains is a perennial challenge. Okay, while you can prevent some of it, but we are looking at this challenge when you go into non-ASCII script. Okay, because for example, some Cyrillic letters can masquerade as ASCII. Okay, but in fact they are Cyrillic letters. So from a technology perspective, we've made sure that they are in fact different code points that make up those letters and the words, therefore. But from a visual perspective, it is indeed very difficult, because somebody, you can spell, like there was a scam going around a few years ago when the word Emirates.com, the EMI, I was actually the Roman number one and not I, and then of course, people caught on to it, and that site was shut down. So, people, and the point is, we can continue trying our best to prevent things from happening, but people get very ingenious and they think of a new way to circumvent us. So it's a process. There is no final one solution that one can have. Is there a possibility of an India-based UDRP dispute resolution organization? So I'm going to share my personal opinion over here to answer this question. Right now in India, we actually don't have, by global standards, the number of domain names in use is reasonably low. It is, by the potential in terms of the number of internet users. A time would come that could change. The numbers goes up, and it may be necessary to have India-based UDRP dispute resolution system. ICANN will not be, necessarily opposed to it or anything, but there has to be enough volume of business for that to, operate, I would manner. I see a question. Does ICANN play a role in any manner in ensuring personal data protection on internet, directly or indirectly? I think this is a great question. We do collect information, on personal data, and that is why this whole challenge that ICANN is facing around GDPR and subsequently any other data protection regime, where a registrant's information is, a lot of the key information is redacted and not visible. That challenge, we are also, post GDPR, we are trying to solve that process so that, one can identify who is seeking information, personal data information, and how it should be released. And so there is a need for a gatekeeper. In the past, the WHOIS system was an open system. Today, it has got locked. And therefore, yes, we have a limited role, but a reasonably important role when it comes to personal data protection. And we are trying to evolve a model in consultation with, the community and public on this. Why any domain suffixing GOV is barred by default or is not barred? Can you kindly explain this question a little bit more? Suffixing
Yeah,
GOV?
if I can, because we can register domain name, say, by suffix .gov. In India, if we register it by .in domain, means edu.gov.in, that domain name can be registered, and it can be a lookalike of government domain. So any domain which has suffix .gov should be barred by default. That is also.
So I would agree. I would tend to agree with you. But so what ICANN adjudicates on, or is involved with rather, is right of the dot. But you're talking of the left of the dot, which is the second level, and that is really that is the responsibility of the registry. Okay, that is running.in or running.com or whichever registry. which can decide that they will not allow GOV to be on the left side of the dot. Okay, so it's a matter of creating policy at the registry level. Privacy protection of whois information prevents identification and phishing sites and taking action. What is the privacy issue in terms of business related domain names? Sir, can you explain this kindly?
Say who is information contains the owner name, registrant's name, and the names of people who are in charge of administration of the domain name. Okay,
Right.
now when there is a lookalike domain or some domain which is actually carrying on a phishing activity, if law enforcement has to take action, we don't get the name and address of the owner of the domain. So normally we talk of privacy in terms of personal information of individuals, but many of the domains are business domain names, and the registrant's name as well as the administration admin name are actually business email addresses. So not subject to the privacy regulations as we normally look at. So there is a wrong perception that business email becomes the is recognized as a private information and protected.
Fair enough. Okay, I understand. I understand your question. It's a great question. So I will speak from the perspective of, and this is a huge challenge, and this is part of the challenge that we are facing post GDPR. And I'll tell you from the perspective of the registrar. Okay. So the registry, if you look at the whole ecosystem and the value chain, sir, you're the registrant. You get a domain name from a registrar. So that's the first interface into the ecosystem. And then the registrant is getting it from the registry operator. Okay, now, when there is any law enforcement activity, the first point of contact for a law enforcement agency is the registrar. Okay. Now, after GDPR, what has happened? The registrar is now saying, all this time I was populating the whois database in good faith. I may have asked for some Mr. Navi Vijay Shankar's some ID. He has shown it to me, and I've given him, he wanted a .com address. I've given it to him, and he's paid me for it. So that's the end of the story. Today, because there is such heavy penalties which are imposed, because of in the case of GDPR violation, registrars have said that, we don't want to take a risk. We are just going to take everything out. Till a better system is created, then we can put it back in. Now, this has become a huge problem for law enforcement agencies. Okay, because law enforcement agencies are unable to go online and find something. They are now having to come to registrars. Many registrar operators may not, let's say there's a registrar out of, let's say, the Netherlands, and somebody, police, cyber police from let's say Bangalore, sends them an email or even calls them. They are not obligated to answer that call. They don't know, they can't even understand the value of what they're holding up. They may or may not respond on time. Okay. And this has been the biggest challenge that we are looking at post GDPR. And this is one of the rare instances where ICANN organization is saying that, look, normally we rely on the community to tell us what to do, but on this occasion, we are actually telling the community this is something we need to do and fix. And we are giving them models to vet and look at, and and approve, so that because there is a cost element, to build this you can call it a ticketing system, you can call it a new who is, whatever you want to call it, but to build the system there is going to be a cost. So who's going to pay that? Who will be responsible for running it, and who will actually oversee it? Okay. Now, so then there could be someone can challenge ICANN on saying that, why is ICANN doing it? Why should there not be a third party, even more independent of the system? Whatever it may be, but we are very keen to try and solve that problem. But sir, you have actually, pinpointed one of the challenges that we are looking at. It falls in the general who is challenge, but you've nuanced it with a very specific example of a corporate ID versus a personal ID, and therefore, but I wanted to share it. Answer it from the perspective of the registrar, who is just not willing to take any risk and take, and take that decision of choosing between one and the other. What action I can initiate on registrars who suggest lookalike? That's fairly straightforward. It is actually part of the registrar agreement that there are certain standards, quality standards that they have to maintain, including prevention of any of these fraudulent activities, and of course. If there is any allegations which are proven to be correct, then that registrar agreement would be, cancelled. So we face challenges not so much in the English-speaking system, but there are countries where they have a almost like a just as vibrant, domain name system in a local, in a different script, and monitoring that has been, challenging. Okay, what measures ICANN will take to ensure Net4 episode doesn't happen in the future? This is $1 million question. We put out a blog 7 days ago on what the next steps can be. But if I can take a couple, how much time do we have? Can I take 2 or 3 minutes to talk a little bit about
please. Go ahead.
So the Net4 India situation is a classic situation of essentially a business failure, which has been brewing for a while, and for all practical purposes, we had actually suspended them in 2019. But the court appointed, the person appointed by the court as a resolution professional wrote to us saying to us that if you suspend Net4, then the court proceedings to recover assets or debt or whatever, the debt, recovering system would collapse, and it would cause more harm. Okay, so we staggered the suspension order, and in all fairness, Net4 has been, so this also comes to another aspect. So far nobody's asked me this question, but let me just share with you proactively. So it also comes to the aspect of where ICANN gets its revenue from. So ICANN's revenue comes from registry and registrar operators. So every time, let's say somebody renews a domain name, we get 18 cents for the domain name, and so on and so forth. So it's a very long tail revenue which comes in small drips and drabs. So for all practical purposes, the money owed to ICANN by Net4 India, they may have been a little behind last year for a few quarters, but now they are pretty much up to speed. So it's not like we have any reason to suspend them for not paying us. Now, where else what are the other conditions in which Net for India can be suspended? One can be, of course, not being able to service their customers. What, as you, many of you who would have domain names may have discovered that they had a back-end business deal with another registrar. Okay. That, quite frankly, there is no illegality in it, but what is happening is we have found, obviously, there has been an issue where what they are doing is that when, let's say, Mr. X or Miss Y wants to uh, move a domain name out of Net for India, their system is automatically sending it to their partner, a foreign company, and it's getting locked over there. And then the rules that get invoked is that, for 60 days you cannot move the domain name because it's just been moved. So a lot of these cases have come to light. About 7-10 days ago, we published a blog detailing everything that has happened and what are the steps that ICANN can take in the future. And what are the grounds for suspension, so on and so forth. So it's all in the public domain, but can we prevent this from happening again in the future? We would not like to see registrants inconvenienced, and we would hope that we can improve the systems in place. But there is no guarantee. I mean, this is a systemic process that Net for their business is something, but they got embroiled in something else, and it's resulted in this challenge. So obviously, all I can say is that we'll strive to make sure that such a situation doesn't happen again, and again, this is where the community comes in and advises us, okay, how a registrar agreement can be improved, what needs to be done to improve it. Have you looked at lookalike and a possible solution? Sir, I have not looked at lookalike. So I'm going to skip that. I'm going to go to the next one. Do the so-called dark web websites also register with ICANN? No, they don't. They have their own protocols. Do you recognize Net4 as a cybersecurity incident? It is, it is not a cybersecurity, pure cybersecurity incident, but there are some elements of it certainly. I think some of the unintended consequences of the situation has led for some of the aspects to become cybersecurity, a cybersecurity challenge. And who can join ICANN global community? Any eligibility criteria? Absolutely none whatsoever. But I must say that, I'm not going to leave you by saying that just go to icann.org and figure it out. Please feel free to connect with me. I'll be very happy to help anybody who wants to join and talk some more about it. Because you can, the way to join is really to join one of the mailing lists and start getting involved in the conversation. But more importantly, to choose the right group. So we've got about 2 minutes. So let me stop here.
Thank you, Mr. Samir. It was a great pleasure to have you amongst us at FDPPI Janmadani webinar. We would like to thank you for your presence and enlightening us on more on ICANN mission and activities. We request Mr. S.P. Arya, Partner Director at Bistec Private Limited, to give the vote of thanks. Over to you, Mr. Arya. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Arya.
Good evening, everybody. And thanks to Naviji for arranging such a wonderful session with Samiran Gupta ji. who has explained and about ICANN. And I think I knew very little about ICANN. But yes, now onward, I can say a bit more has been added, a lot has been added to that knowledge. And yes, the purpose of asking this question, that who can join ICANN global community, I was interested in knowing that, how to join it. I will connect with you separately on that. And then I hope everybody else has enjoyed the session and gained a lot insight about ICANN. And I thank you, everybody. Thank you first at the outset. The first thank you is to Mr. Navi, and second is to Samiran for his great insight and insightful words. And thank you for can say all the participants here who can say in this time of the evening have joined here, and then can say just made the can say environment knowledgeful environment with Samiran ji. And thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sanyogita. You always have been very good, excellent. And Kodan Ramji, enthusiasm is always great at all. He's a wonderful person. I know, you can say I could guess.
Thank you, Mr. Arya, for those
Thank
kind
you,
of.
everybody. Thank you.
Any last words, Mr. Navi, from you to Mr. Samiran Gupta?
Thank you. I've always been enamored by ICANN's democratic way of working. In fact, their at-large kind of action once prompted me to start cyberdemocracy.org as a website, and I was very enthusiastically trying to suggest that India should develop a sort of a system where cyber states will be, cyber cities will be there, cyber states will be there, cyber India will be there, and we will be using it for opinions because we don't have this system of getting public opinion on many of the issues. No? So I wanted to create something like that. That was long time back when I was in Chennai. Of course, there are several things which doesn't work out. Many of my ideas have always been there. Even this lookalikes.in was one of the services for which I filed a patent sometime in 2001 or 2002. Okay, the idea was to have a disclosure system based on which one particular website may say, I am not the other. Okay, so that the consumer confusion, which we say is part of the domain name disputes, is eliminated. So you go to navi.org, I am saying I am not navi. Something else. So there is no question of consumer confusion. Therefore, domain name disputes to some extent will get solved. That was the idea because that was the time when the GLTDs were extended from the first 7 to something more. Now we are talking of 1,200 domain names, so that for every domain name in a brand, this thing, there will be a competing domain name. So consumer confusion has actually increased. That is one of the things which has affected domain name disputes. I've also been very much appreciative of the UDRP system itself. Okay, that is where the system actually suggests a you can regulatory system and then have the arbitration. In fact, I have suggested that for the intermediary dispute resolution in India, if you look at some of my this thing, for the intermediary disputes also, I have said, let us start something like this UDRP. We will have a policy and we will have an arbitration kind of thing. So ICANN has been doing, and one more technically speaking, the distributed system for domain name management and particularly security they manage, that is a different issue itself. Security of the keys for these 13 root servers, managing that is a fascinating technical story. I think somebody like Arya should actually give us a presentation at some point of time on that system. That is, how do these people come once in a year or whatever is it in a period? And yeah, Samiran?
4 times a year, in fact, but COVID has really hampered that. The seven keys distributed across the world. Yes.
Most of the people, even in our community, would not know how that system works. And I think there is some kind of a lesson there which we can adopt for security purpose elsewhere also. I don't know. We have to just see if they have got 7 people, we can have only 3 people, doesn't matter. But the system has something for us to learn. I am sure that somebody should take up the lead to describe that system in layman's words so that everybody will understand. I feel there is something to be learned there. So I just wanted Samiran to interact with our people and introduce ICANN, because all the things which we do are on the basis of internet, and that is a foundation. So of course, people like us sometimes take classes in colleges, so we try to describe the ICANN system. But most of the other business people, they know how to use the domain name, but they don't know what is behind that. So that's why I felt it would be good to have Samiran here. Thanks, Samiran. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. And, I got some great questions. I hope, I've answered them to everybody's satisfaction. But if there are more questions, I'm very happy, sir, if you share my email ID with the group here. Very happy to take questions. The more engagement we get from the community, the better it is really for ICANN in that sense.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank you.